Hello everyone. Unfortunately, there's a few video feed problems at the start of this episode with Geoff Thomas, but it does get better after 15 minutes or so stick with it. The sound's fine, so no worries there. Some great insights from Geoff. So I hope you enjoy the episode from Garibaldi Red.
You're listening to Garibaldi Red, a Nottingham Forest podcast brought to you by Nottinghamshire Live.
We're joined this week, I'm delighted to say, by former Reds and England midfielder Geoff Thomas. Thanks for joining us, Geoff.
Yeah, no, pleasure.
How have you been? Lockdown and everything, has it been tough? Is it just you and family out there in the sticks somewhere?
Well, we are fortunate. We've got a plot around us that's probably about half an acre, so we can escape the house. But my mother's been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Just before this just before all this sort of kicked off, my sister was a nurse, and so they live up in the north of Manchester, and so she was panicking, what we're going to do with my mum. And so we've had my mum since, just before the lockdown started. So it's given me a different outlook on what people have to do day in, day out, with 24-hour care and everything. And everything's fine, but it's tough. It's tough for everybody, isn't it, at the moment? But it's like I say, we're fortunate. We've got enough room, space to get out, especially in the early days. And we've been blessed with the weather as well, haven't we? So it's only the last week or so it's been a bit dull, but all good, all positive, really.
Have you been watching much football now it's back? And have you missed it as a former player? Are you someone who kept strongly in touch with the game, or have you drifted away from it?
I'm more of a football fan now. When I was playing, it was my life, 100%. Every single minute of the day was concentrating on what was coming up on the Saturday or midweek game. But since then, other things have taken a priority in my life, and it does take a back seat a little bit now. But I think every game that's been on TV so far has been on our TV.
Do you miss the game then? Obviously, you've been retired quite a long time. Is it hard not being a player anymore, even after 17 years or so since you retired?
I think any footballer will tell you that what you miss is that day-to-day contact with your fellow teammates, that dressing room humour. That's what you do miss. And you do miss that sort of excitement of Saturday, the big games and everything like that. But, I was a footballer for 18 years. And I look back at my time, I think it's similar to Stuart Pearce, really. I was an apprentice electrician like Stuart. And when you come into the game a little bit later in life, you appreciate every single minute of it. And it's not a proper job in many respects. And while it lasts, it's fantastic. And, when it's finished, you're just grateful like you've had such a long time in something that you love doing.
You talk about that day-to-day contacts and that dressing room. The dressing room you were in at Forest, that had some proper characters in, with Rogers, Crossley, Besson, Andy Johnson. Everything I hear about him, he was basically mental. What was that dressing room like that you were in at Forest?
It was different, and I think it was a mixture, really, because I think you could see the history of and the legacy of Brian Clough. Obviously, we're still there. He just departed the year before Stuart Pearce had taken over as caretaker. And Stuart, when I arrived, was still there. And so he had the likes of Ian Wone, Steve Stone, Mark Crossley, who had known nothing else but the Clough way, really. And then you've got a character like Dave Bassett coming in. And Dave brought a couple of characters in that dressing room that just, made it sort of tick totally differently, I would imagine. Alan Rogers, you mentioned, complete lunatic as well. It was Andy Johnson, and it just mixed really well, actually. After a couple of sort of weeks, maybe pre-season, where people were sort of having their own opinions of, getting it out there, but it seemed to settle down, and the season went really well. We had the likes of Pierre Van Hooijdonk and Campbell up front, which was quite a force. So it's looking back, it was a decent time, good time.
How did you end up there? Did you know Dave Bassett well from through your career or not? I mean, what was the process of you ending up at the City Ground?
No, I didn't know Dave at all. And my last game for Wolverhampton Wanderers was in a playoff game against Crystal Palace. And to be honest, I was just getting back to full fitness. I'd done my cruciate twice at Wolves. And, you know, I was obviously coming to the latter end of my career. But I felt I was just getting back to some sort of fitness where I could probably at least go another couple of years. And Wolves were changing, you know, I'd changed probably about 4 or 5 times while I was there. Unfortunately, I was more of a spectator while I was at Wolverhampton. And they changed the managers so many times that, you know, a different guy came in, he had different ideas. So when my contract just ran out after 4 years there, so Dave just wanted, I think, a few people that he'd heard of, had a sort of character that he wanted inside his dressing room. And, you know, from my days at Crystal Palace, I think I was a captain down there for 6-7 years. And similar, it was like, you know, strong characters in that dressing room, like being Wright, Mark Bright, and Andy Gray and the likes. And I think he wanted somebody who could come in and not be scared of what was already there. So I think that's, you know, just a conversation I had with Dave. I was quite looking forward to the challenge of going to a club with a great reputation. I always liked playing there at Forest. And, you know, football fans there are very knowledgeable. And, yeah, like I say, I loved every minute. I'm sure a few fans were taken aback a little bit when I signed. But, like I say, I tried my best every time, as always, when you go on the pitch.
That first season couldn't have gone any better, really, could it? You really dominated that league. What are your kind of general memories of that season?
I just felt I was getting fitter and fitter. And, you know, I think was there a home debut that was on TV against Norwich? And I think we absolutely smashed Norwich. And we'd had a decent pre-season. And we seemed to, you know, like I say, the characters that were there from before, Steve Stone and Ian Wall, seemed to enjoy what was going on. And we took that on the pitch. And I think we started off really, really well. And I thought I was going to be like a bit part player, but, you know, they'd signed Andy Johnson for quite a bit of money. And I just started enjoying it that much that, you know, unfortunately, I think I scored a couple of goals against Sheffield United and my hamstring, I just tore my hamstring. And that put me out a little bit. And so that's when the season sort of was in and out. That's the season for me. I don't know how many games I played, 20-odd games for them, but that season. But no, like I say, I was still enjoying football for what it was and, you know, grateful that I was playing promotion football all the time. Every time I went onto the pitch, it was with the likes of Pierre Van Hooijdonk, you know, who's scoring some spectacular goals.
There's always Van Hooijdonk questions whenever anyone comes on from that team. What was he like in the dressing room? Was he, even before he went on strike, was he a tough character to deal with, a bit of a mercurial genius or not?
Yeah, he was a player that, you know, he had so much ability. And he probably had less ability than he thought he had. You know, he was. I found that the Dutch character is very sort of confident in themselves, in their own abilities, and yeah, he definitely had that. He had, but that when everything was going well, he was fine. He was fine. He had ideas. That's where his character showed coming to the end of the season. He started having ideas what next season the club needed.
Right.
You know, and I think when you're dealing with the characters like Dave Bassett, you know, it's not going to work because he's you know, he's been in the game for so many years. You just felt it's not going to end well. And it didn't. You know, when a player goes in with a list of players that we should be signing,
Who was on the list? You know who was on the list?
I think they were all probably Dutch. Dutch sort of, you know, played a couple of international games and all that sort of thing. Yeah, but yeah. I think
that team, obviously, Van Hooijdonk and Campbell kind of stand out as the stars of that team. But you had Wone, you had Stone, yourself, Gemmell, Johnson. That was a good team. Did you think it was too good for the Championship when you arrived, or not?
To be honest, I knew that league was a battle to get out of, and you need quality, but you also need the physical side as well, because it's tough. There's no easy game, as in like the Premiership. Every game you have to be at it to get the points. And I, to be honest, when I went to Forest, I thought it was always a little bit of a light touch. If you've got about them around that period, you've got a chance of coming away with a result. And I think just a little bit of added steel in there was allowed, with the likes of Johnson. And you get the mixture of John O, Tank, and then with the people like Chris Bart-Williams and Gemmell, that mixture it just makes for a great side. I'm going back even further. The great Liverpool side. They always had a great mix of guts and but also that ability inside the side, and that blend is the formula for any successful side.
Was it? I don't know if crazy gang's the right way to describe it, but when you had characters like Tank and Andy Johnson and Dave Bassett who'd been around Wimbledon, was it a fairly unique team spirit that you had, or not?
No, it was. It was always sort of bubbling along. You just didn't know what was going to happen next, and yeah, I think the manager wasn't sort of off limits when it came to all the crazy things that were going on. But he liked that. He liked having players enjoying themselves on and off the pitch. And I think for that year, everything went well. And like I say, when things are going well, it hides a few cracks. And I think when it came to the end of the season, the cracks started to appear. And unfortunately, I think, we kept that squad together and added to it. It would have done okay. I always remember the first game down at Arsenal. We had Pierre, down there, and obviously Kev as well. The side was sort of, the goals were taken away straight away before we even had a chance of doing anything in the Premiership.
You scored a good goal in that game, and then you won. Did you win the next two, I think? Did you feel at the time, actually, we might be all right?
Yeah, no, I thought, Coventry, I think we beat. And, I thought we were solid enough. With Steve Chettle and the guys at the back, who else, Colin Cooper, it was great experience. And Big John Helder, we had enough quality there to be strong enough. But losing Pierre and having that sort of atmosphere around the ground and people asking the same old question, when's he coming back, was frustrating for everybody. Great shame, really. When you look back, it was a great shame we couldn't really sort of keep the momentum going from the season, because we felt like we could beat anybody, to be honest.
You had Darshfield come in, didn't you? And he was rapid, but he looked very raw. Did you think that if he'd been with Pierre, then actually that might have been a decent partnership even without Kevin, do you maybe?
Yeah, I think Darsh was, like you said the word raw, that's probably bang on what he was, but he was willing to listen, and that's the difference with Pierre. I'm not sure Pierre would have had the patience to sort of nurture and cajole him along. Kev would have done, but like I say, everybody's character is different. And Pierre, and if we kept Pierre and Kev together, that would have been different. Darsh then would have been fantastic to chuck on for half an hour, and it was so quick. Yeah, I remember that game. He went away from Keown and he actually had the ball. Never seen that. Martin Keown was quick, and this guy was rapid.
Did you feel, as that season wound on, did it feel like it was getting away from you? Was the dressing room struggling to stay together until Pierre came back, and then it probably got even worse, I guess?
No, it was a case of we went down to Stamford Bridge, and my season was finished at Stamford Bridge. I did my cruise ship there, and so I started watching the rest of the season from the physio's room and from the gym. And when you're down there, you constantly seem to be getting injuries to key figures. And Steve Stone was out for a while. And our performances weren't that bad. I always felt we weren't that far away. But then as soon as that confidence, that little edge, you lose that little bit, then results start turning against you. And that's what happened. You find yourself bottom of the table. When you're around bottom at Christmas time, it's tough to get out of there.
What was it like when Pierre came back? There's been a lot said about it. I think he said maybe that you were one of the few players who called him out for his behaviour. I mean, is that true? And what was it like when he did return?
Yeah, I think, I was old in the tooth as well. And I think, for me, football's all about respect. And you respect everybody at the club, fans, and you respect management all the way down to the tea lady. And what he showed to the rest of the players was, it was like you're saying, you're not good enough, guys. And everybody can have that opinion. But keep that to yourself and just try yourself. You always should be trying the best for your own career. But you should have the mindset to where you want to help the team. And he just sort of chucked that away as soon as he saw us getting to Premiership and he wasn't getting what he wanted. He chucked it away, the opportunity of playing in the Premiership. And it's a shame because as a character, he was a nice guy and everything, like I say, when everything's going well, everything's fine. But he had like a bee in his bonnet where he wanted things to be different. So when he came in the dressing room for the first time, there was a lot of players that just didn't want to talk to him. But what needed to be said had to be said. So, I was vocal enough to say exactly what the lads were thinking, and it was time to move on. But the atmosphere was always going to be different. It was going to take a good while because I think the club had to start winning pretty quickly to turn things around. But we didn't get enough results. Things did improve slightly, but we didn't get enough results to really sort of forget what had gone on before.
What was it like when Bassett went? I mean, he brought you there. Were the players pretty gutted for him, I guess?
I think so, because it felt like it wasn't in his control. It felt like the hand that he was given was probably not the one that he was thinking he was going to have at the end of the season prior to that. So, I think even, the Forest guys who have been there for quite a number of years were gutted as well. But, that's football. It's a results game and it's the players have to just get on with it then.
Is he a bit of an underrated manager? Because he's got this kind of the reputation from Wimbledon of playing the long ball type stuff, but you didn't really play that, did you? It was more horses for courses. You think he deserves a bit more of a respect as a manager? Not that he doesn't get respect, but higher standing in the game, perhaps.
Yeah, no, I think, but inside the game, he has got that sort of acknowledgement where, Alex Ferguson was one of his closest friends in the game as well. What Dave had was great knowledge of players, not just in this country, but even before, so many foreigners are playing in this game now in the Premiership. He was well aware of what Scandinavian football was, what Italian players were like, Spanish players. His knowledge was vast. And when it came down to his style of play, he was very honest. He played to what he had in front of him. If his players weren't, like the Wimbledon days, you're not going to get Vinnie Jones doing pirouettes in the midfield and this sort of thing. Them sort of characters, you've got to have a style of play to suit the style of footballer they are, or the quality of footballers you've got. At Forest, he walked into a dressing room where there was enough quality to play football. And that season, we got promoted. There was some really good football, some great games, and like you say, we walked that league, really. We probably took our foot off the pedal a little bit and started to relax a little bit sooner than we should have done near the end. But yeah, it was a good enough players in that dressing room for Dave to see that he could change what that perception was of this long ball. And I've had it as well with Steve Coppell at Crystal Palace. He had a reputation of being a bit direct. But again, when you've only got 2 or 3 players at the start when he went into the club, he knew that he had to play to a style that suited the players. And as things improved and players improved, then that type of football, slowly started to change as well.
But there are a few underrated players within that squad, like Chettle and Wone and Scott Gemmell, who probably should have got more international honours than they did, do you think?
Yeah, I don't think they were underrated. I think they were solid professionals. Roney was like, he wasn't blessed with pace, but he was like a Teddy Sheringham sort of player. Very, very knowledgeable about the game and what he did. Great feet. Scott Gemmell, similar. He could see a pass that nobody else could see. And likewise, Chris Williams, great feet. And then you got the power and the pace of Steve Stone. He'd run through brick walls just to get, to the byline. So it's, Chettle was, I think, just being such a nice guy, I think he went under the radar a little bit because he wasn't a shouter or anything like that. He just got on with the game. And he had a good partnership for, a good few years with Colin Cooper. Are
you in touch with any of those guys now, or too many players from your career? Are you still mates with a lot of players?
Football's one of them things, especially the game I'm involved with now, with trying to raise awareness and funds for charity and all this sort of thing. You do call on these sort of characters now and then. Alan Rodgers I've been in touch with because I've seen he's been quite vocal on certain blogs and and he doesn't hold back. He's and I've seen, actually I saw strangely enough Andy Johnson was very close to in my days at Forest, and I haven't seen him much at all, but from yesterday you probably wouldn't recognise him. He looked quite well, actually, but he's a little bit weight on.
Did you have to try and police Andy Johnson within that dressing room?
Nobody could police Andy Johnson. Nobody could do that. He was a law to himself. He could do what he wanted. He got away with it most of the time.
When we go back to that season, obviously Dave leaves and Ron Atkinson comes in, kind of a different kind of manager. What was that like? Did you think, this is not going to work, or did you think actually we can still get out of it when Big Ron came in? Ron came in and he showed what he was all about, really. Probably one of the first couple of days training, he had a little bit of a row. I was just getting fit enough to sort of show my face on the training ground, and it was like a five-a-side to finish the training day. And have you seen the film Kes? Yeah. There
was a scene from that where the PE teachers, the referee, as well as playing ball, was wrong. And Pierre Van Hooijdonk was the kid that got sent off in the Kes film. It was like they were just bad-mouthing each other as that long walk home from that training ground along the bank of the Trent. Ron was telling Pierre to go, and Pierre was turning around, chucking back, swear words at Ron and everything like that. So it was Ron's baptism at the club was tough for him because obviously the results didn't go that well either, and even trying to find the right dugout took him a while.
Do you think he was a bit doomed then himself coming in, Ron, with the situation as it was? The club was in a bit of a mess, to be fair, wasn't it?
Yeah, and the club just needed to settle down, and he needed somebody of that character and that reputation where the players knew what he's done before, and so he had that respect as soon as he walked in. So that's what it needed to sort of try and get it back on some sort of the right path. But it was the club really took a while to recover from that.
He brought a couple of players in like Carlton Palmer, who I've listened to being quite a tough character as well. Did that not really work? And how did Carlton fit in?
Yeah, Carlton. He's another one of these guys. I mean, I think he was at Sheffield Wednesday with Big Ron for a number of years. So he knew what he was going to get with Carlton. And Carlton, again, was one of these guys in the dressing room that was larger than life. And actually, I do speak to Carlton now and then, even now. But Yeah, it was going to take quite a bit for it to turn around, but yeah, I don't know. I honestly was watching the side sort of struggle on weekend, like all the fans were. It's frustrating that I was watching it, but yeah, I'm trying to think what some of the players that he did bring in as well weren't up to the mark of changing it around. Maybe for the future, I think Ron was a short-term fix. But I think he was starting to think more long-term, and the players we're bringing in, he would have had to work with, but they weren't ready. So that's why I don't think things turned around that quick.
When you leave at the end of that season, was that inevitable? Were you keen to stay on even though they'd gone down or not?
I'd love to have stayed. I mean, I love Nottingham. I love the club. But I knew, like I say, I got injured, did me PCL cruciate at Chelsea, and I was never fit for the rest of the season. So, I was just on a short-term contract anyway. So I couldn't expect another contract. So Dave went up to Barnsley and followed Dave up there. He was daft enough to take me on for another year.
You went with a couple of... Chettle went there as well, didn't he? There's a few kind of a bit of exodus there.
Ships. Ian Wall went there for a while as well. So, yeah, and Barnsley got into the playoffs. We're not far off. So, yeah, going back to what you said about Dave, he had a great way of sort of getting a good dressing room pretty quickly, and he did the same again at Barnsley.
So even though you didn't play as much as you would have wanted in Nottingham, was it one of the better chapters in your career in terms of enjoying your football, enjoying the city? Was it a good time?
It was definitely a time where, to be honest, I had no regrets in my football career. I just mentioned before I had 18 years in it. And Forest, I was living over I am now in the West Midlands, and I was travelling every day across to Nottingham. And then as soon as there was a chance of getting Premiership football again, and talking to Dave Bassett and saying, "Am I in your plans if we do get promoted?" And as soon as he said yes, I moved over and ended up living in Nottingham for 4 years, because I just really wanted that opportunity of playing at that top level and against top level players again. And it, like I say, for a year, for more than a year, it was going well. And I think just getting injured personally obviously stopped that. But a depleted side with other injuries during that season in the Premiership, it just meant it wasn't strong enough to carry on. But I look back and it's with no regrets whatsoever at Forest. And I knew my time was up as well, because when I was at Barnsley, I was up there for nearly 2 years, and Dave Black came to Forest. Actually, I talked about coming back for a little while at Forest because he wanted a few people in the dressing room, but that just didn't happen. He ended up going down the Italian route. But
that worked well, yeah.
Yeah, but Dave was just starting out in his management career, and I'd been with Dave when we were teenagers at Crewe, where we both started more or less. Dave was obviously started at Man United, but we were at Crewe Alexandra together. So we played at England together, so we knew each other really, really well. And he just knew what I was about, and yeah, we just had a discussion. But I probably wasn't fit enough to get back into that side at the time.
Do you see Forest as a Premier League club in waiting still, or have they been out of the top flight for so long now that the game's changed a bit?
No, I think there's a brand of clubs that are probably top half of Premiership, and then the rest is them, and probably a good half of the Championship are capable and big enough to play in the Premiership, and Forest is definitely one of them. It doesn't take much. It just takes you. There's a new owner or a manager that sparks something a bit special, and then a club can find themselves doing ever so well. Look at Leicester. Sorry to mention Leicester on this podcast, but they're a great example. Things can change pretty quickly.
True. Since you've left the game, you've done a lot of charity fundraising. You're not playing in a tournament coming up.
No.
You're managing? Have you been sacked from being a manager? I heard you.
Well, there's some skullduggery going on at the moment. I've been sacked. My record's not great over the last 2 years. Yeah, there's a charity called Cure Leukemia that do a football tournament in St. George's Park every year, and it's growing and growing, getting stronger and stronger. So, we're trying to get about 30-odd teams there this year. So, looking forward to that.
Copperdale Cure Leukemia. It's 16th of October at St. George's Park. It's a 6-a-side tournament, but one of the players can be a legend. You've got some good players on the list, haven't you? Darren Bent, Kevin Phillips, people like that, Matt Letizia.
Keep reading that list. Francis Benali, and I think Chris Sutton's going to join us as well. Yeah, the names are coming pretty quickly at the moment. So yeah, it should be. It's honestly, it's a great event. It's a full day, and there's a bar there as well. So, so I think hopefully by the end of mid-October, what's going on with COVID-19, that will be relaxed enough where everybody can have a good time.
Cancer takes a big impact on your life. I've been told I've got cancer, and it's no fun. Obviously, you don't know how you're going to react at the time, but I'm fine now, and you touch wood, you're fine now. But can you just tell listeners what kind of an impact it has on your life and your family in particular?
You mentioned the word cancer, and it just takes you back to the day, probably like yourself. It's a really scary word to be confronted with. And actually, July the 4th, 2003, I was told that I probably only had about 3 months to live. And I had a form of leukemia. Back then was more or less a death sentence, and you couldn't find a match to have a stem cell transplant. And I was fortunate to find one pretty quickly in my sister, and my sister's match was good enough. So with the skills of the professor, he went through that process, took about 2 years to recover. But it makes you look at life totally different with the family and everything. The girls were only 10 and 7, and all I wanted to do for about 3 months was make sure and understand that they were going to be looked after if it didn't go well. And you just reevaluate everything. So now that's what I say about football. When I look back at football, I know what I'm remembered for. My chip against France, I will live that forevermore. But that was just a part of a great experience, 18 years. Loved it, loved playing football. And soon as your life's under threat, everything is magnified. What's real, what really means the most to you. And the most is your health and your family's health. And I think everything else that goes around your life at that time it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And that's how I try and live my life now. Try and be positive about everything, because being negative and just waking up in the morning in a grumpy mood is just draining. You might as well wake up with a smile and just appreciate what the sun's shining and you're getting on with life, and crack on and just do as well as you can. Leukemia
has touched football in quite a lot of ways. There's a lot of people who seem to have had it. I mean, you'll keep fundraising for as long as you can, will you, to try and make a difference?
The reason I'm still involved with it, because I got close with my professor, and he's one of the top guys in the UK. But his vision is something that's took a while for people to really understand what it's all about. So Cure Leukemia, really, the charity that have started to fund this network that allows clinical trials to be accelerated to benefit patients. And we've seen this with COVID-19. Our structure has been replicated to fast track a trial that in a matter of weeks have found out it reduces the risk of death from this. So that's what we're saying. It's such a simple process that we've set up. And the funding does take over £1 million a year. But it's a simple process that unites. It's like building a great team from the best teams in the Premiership. And that's what we're doing with the NHS, bringing together the different trusts, the different hospitals that have the skill set to deliver what we need, answers to this, dreadful disease. So while I've got the passion and I can see things moving forward, I'll carry on doing what I'm doing. And while the charity feel I've still got a role to play, and the doctor's not fed up with me saying, right, what next, then I'll continue doing what I'm doing.
Would you ever get back into football if someone said, do you fancy being a number 2 at this club or anything like that? Or is that not something that interests you?
No, you love playing with that idea in your mind. Adi Boothroyd was a good mate of mine. And when he was at a number of clubs, he used to invite me down to watch them train and all that and get involved with the characters in the dressing room, just, to see how people tick and then give my opinion on certain things that were going on the pitch. But that was just like as a mate. But he did chuck a few carrots at me a few times, saying, if I got a bigger club, would you come along, and all that sort of thing. And that just sparked off, I wouldn't mind that at all. But no, like I say, when you've been out of the game for such a long time, there's generations of different people that have come through the system that are probably more in touch with what's going on. I'm probably old school now compared to the rest of the guys that are coming through now.
How do you see the game now then in terms of the way players are? Is it a totally different culture, even though you've only been out of a dressing room? It's not been that long, to be fair. Is it a totally different game now?
I don't think the dressing room, I say that. I think the dressing room has changed considerably. A lot of my mates are managers. One of them, obviously, Gareth Southgate. I played at Crystal Palace for 4 or 5 years. You speak to these guys and Alan Pardew and the likes, and it is a totally different thing now. Players, and in some ways, if I was a player today and the way players look after themselves and get looked after, I probably wouldn't have got the injuries I had, because I used to chuck myself out onto that pitch every Saturday. I'd have injections to make sure I was fit enough, cortisone injections, and that wouldn't be allowed now. What was going on back when we were playing? So I think players are more of an asset now, and clubs look at that way. As soon as they're not doing as well as they should be, then you're probably out of the door. And players probably are looking to do as much as they can in their career in a shorter time than we were doing. I think we just wanted to play football and just love playing football, and just the financial side was a bonus. I think it's changed now. I think people are chasing that big wage packet. You can see kids. It's a different drive. When you see him on the park, I want to be a professional footballer for what's attached to it all, rather than just loving it. The special players that are coming through still now are the ones who actually love it and are not affected by what the attractions is all around you. The great cars, the big houses, and all that. So that's not their drive, and that's why they're the great players.
Steve Chettle's been a guest on this podcast, and I asked him, would you wish you'd been playing now for the money? And, I'm sure you made a decent living, but are you envious of the crazy money that's in the game now? He said yes, very much so, by the way.
Did he?
He did, yeah.
Well, I thought he might. Yeah. No, I'm not, because I think with that money becomes a totally different responsibility, where you're on stage and you're on show all the time. And I think with social media now, football, and Nottingham was a great place. They had I think my experience in Nottingham Forest was a Christmas get together. Cloughry had started it, and I'm not sure it still goes on today. But you get in early, you'd have a glass of champagne, you do a five-a-side, and you go out as the club all together. And I think we were even bottom of the Premiership. And we all went out in fancy dress, and didn't have anybody sort of coming up to us saying, what are you lot doing out? The fans were still coming up and saying, what's happening next Saturday? And the lads were just enjoying Christmas for what it was, getting and having a good time. But I think today you'd just be lambasted for anything like that. Players are seen totally different. now from fans as well. There's not that connection anymore. And that's what I liked about playing football. I love the connection with the supporters. Even when things weren't going right, I love the banter with fans and all that, and try and prove some fans wrong sometimes and enjoy the good days with them as well.
What's a night like? What's a night out in Nottingham like with Alan Rodgers and Andy Johnson and those lads? Terrifying or not?
You always have to have the wits about you, that's for sure. No, it's many a times where we had to put Andy Johnson in a taxi to get him back to Melton Mowbray. Yeah, he's a good lad. Good lad. Good memories. One of them things that stay in the dressing room.
Well, thanks very much. We'll plug your charity plenty, Geoff, but it's Copper Del Cure Leukemia. Teams, I think, are £2,750 for a team, but like you say, you get a lot thrown in with that: a dinner, a few drinks, a day at St George's Park, special guest appearances, and the like. So, COVID disclaimers included, obviously, but it should be good. So, thanks for joining us, Geoff. Yeah,
just say Ray Parler's speaking as well on the night. So yeah.
Oh, I've been to one of his after dinner speaking things. God, he's got some stories about Tony Adams. Jesus. Well, thanks for joining us, Geoff. We do appreciate it. If people enjoyed this, then do like and subscribe as usual on Apple iTunes and YouTube and Spotify and everywhere else. Leave us a rating, and we'll be back next week. But thanks for joining us. It's been a pleasure, Geoff. Really interesting. Thank you very much.
No problem at all. Anytime.
Thank you for listening to Garibaldi Red, a Nottingham Forest podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, then please let us know. We love hearing your feedback. We'll be back soon with another episode. Thanks for listening.